Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if this is your first time. If you like this video, then please have a delve and see if you like the other videos, but thanks for tuning in. This is a different kind of video today. It's bouncing off a conversation I had with a student today, where she's doing a series of interviews with different people, different types of people, based on a project she's doing. The project she's doing is about stories, narratives, and religion. So those three key points are what she's basing this project on, and the project is based around a concept album. So she chooses a concept album, and she basically looks into the themes of the concept album, and then does a research project around those themes. It's a really interesting project, and she's asking lots of people these questions about religion, narratives, and stories. And I thought it was just a really interesting series of questions. I thought it would be really nice to do a video where I address those questions again to the camera, to you guys, and you can tell me what your response is to the questions. And if any other booktubers want to do a reaction video and talk about their response to the questions, that would be interesting. But they're really, I mean, they're questions that could be the sort of thing people don't want to talk about on their channels or don't want to comment about, because religion is something that people like to keep to themselves, I think, and it can be a volatile subject, but I don't mind talking about it, so I'm quite happy to do that. So she asked me these questions. I'm gonna go through the questions and chat a little bit about my own perspective on life and my own experiences. So the first question she opened up with, what is my religion, or what's my relationship with religion? So I said that I was an atheist, and she asked why, and I said that I came to the conclusion eventually that religion was man-made, that it was something that we created, that it was a product from us rather than the other way around, that we were a product of a supreme being or whatever. That's and I said, I'm quite happy to believe that we could be wrong and there could be something after life, but I don't think we can know that. So really, for me, it makes a lot of logical sense that we created all of these different things, all these different tenets of religion, to understand the world better, especially in the age of very low understanding of science, and a desperate need to understand life and how it's created and where we sit in the universe and all that sort of stuff. There wouldn't have been much of a concept of a universe at the time anyway. So all those kind of things make it common sense, really, I think, that we created religion rather than that religion created us. So, and then she then asked me if I had a relationship with religion and what the relationship was, and I said yes, I did. So when I was a boy, I spent some time with an evangelical religious group, a Christian group, and one particular friend from that period when I was really, really young, still friends now. She's one of my dearest friends, and she still is very religious, and it didn't last with me that long, but it was still an important time, because that religious group, I think, did help me through a difficult time. I had a difficult childhood, and I've had many moments where I've had some form of surrogate parent. So I think that group for a while was like a surrogate parent. And then as I got older, there were other people that especially were kind of acted as surrogate fathers. So sometimes there's a couple of couples that were surrogate mothers and fathers, but definitely surrogate father happened quite a lot. So I think that was an important time for that. And I don't know if you guys can relate to that, if you've had situations like that, or if you had a much more stable upbringing. That's cool if you did. But I think that was an important thing then, and I think I think it's the reason why I've always been interested in religion from a non-believer point of view. I've always been fascinated by it, and I've always been interested to know about it, even if I didn't believe in any kind of faith-based ideology myself. So, you know, I don't think I can separate two really. I think, you know, that did create an interest, and I've always been interested in that. And she went on to ask me if there was a narrative or a story that had an impact on me that's not necessarily related to religion, just a story that made a big impression on me. And I thought long and hard about that question. I sat there for a little bit thinking, well, is there a story that had a big impact on me? And I thought, if I can try and go back to a very young version of me and think about what really did start me on a path of thinking about the worldview I've got, the idea of humans that I've got, the idea of politics that I've got, the idea of how we sit in the world and all that sort of stuff. You know, my understanding of who we are and my attitude to life. Where does that come from? And is there a story that I can take it back to? And I thought the best answer for that question was Robin Hood. So I discovered Robin Hood really young, and I was deeply fascinated by it. I was very inspired by it. I was very excited by the idea. And I always have been really interested in the what elements of truth was there. I thought it was a very romantic but inspiring thing, as it would have been at the time, you know, when they were singing the songs about him, because that's the first form of Robin Hood came from the songs. The people that were aware of the inequality and the faults in the feudal system would have been really inspired by the story of Robin Hood, and I've always been really fascinated by it. So I think you can trace back my sense of justice and my want to change the world and make a difference, going back to Robin Hood. So yeah, I think that's a story that really did grip me, and I think set me on a path. I think that's the earliest you can go back to. So then she asked, can I relate to that story personally? And I thought, well, I'm not a nobleman that's just disassociated myself with my family and decided to live in the woods and steal from people. That's not true. But I did say there was a few things that I could relate to. So I could relate to my disgust, if that's the right word, of the economic inequality in the world, and my desire to do something about it, to make a difference. And I have done that over the years, and I've tried to make a difference, but I've done it in different ways over the years. And now I'm a bit older, I do it in a different way than I did when I was younger. I think I used to be a lot more belligerent and forceful when I was younger. But yeah, that's the kind of thing I can relate to with that. And then she asked me if I thought stories were important, and I think they are desperately important. I think the storytelling and storytellers and stories are the bedrock of our society. They're the touchstones of change, of learning, of understanding, of empathy, of our imaginations. They can fire our imaginations in ways that some things can't. They are so real in whatever form they are. So I think I made a reference in this conversation somewhere. One of the questions I made a reference to the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, saying that I found that in like a really interesting story, and that's a factual historical story. But I also said that I think it's really important that fantastical stories make a huge difference to us. So science fiction and fantasy, I think, are really important. They fire up our imagination, but they also can be used to give the what if questions and make us think about society and how we act as human beings, and what are we like? How do we value our fellow man? How much empathy do we have to the people that need our help? And how do we deal with overpopulation? How do we deal with the climate crisis? How do we deal with the alien or the other? That's been explored really well in science fiction and fantasy as well. So I think those kind of stories are really important, and there's all sorts of things you can get from those besides, obviously, the less fantastical literature that tells stories that are just about relationships and a more grounded idea about looking at our everyday lives and about society as a whole. So I think stories are crucial. I think stories are one of the things I love about what we do on these channels on YouTube, where we talk about stories. We talk about why they've moved us, why they've pulled us in, why they've made us think about people, why they've made us think about life. And a little while ago, probably about a year ago, I guess, I did a video that was bouncing off the Pixar film Soul, and about how beautifully that film used the story of a music teacher trying to inspire his students, and one particular really disillusioned student to be positive about life and savor every moment and make a difference and all that kind of stuff. And that story was really important. The message was really important. Typically Pixar like to do films that are making really good points, and that film Soul really did that. And I think stories do that in a way that we probably take for granted. So I thought it was a really interesting set of questions, and I thought it was worth talking about it on here because, if you put those things together, she was asking these questions. I think the big part of it was connecting it to religion. And, I have had a religious background. It wasn't for very long, but I did have a religious background, and then went away from that. And it wasn't my parents or anything. It was people that, as I said, acted as surrogate parents. There were friends that I got involved with, but I have got a relationship with religion because I look into it and I investigate it and I research it and I'm interested in it, and I have had many conversations with people about it, and conversations with religious people that hold their faith very dear. That was the other question. Sorry, that's another question that I found an interesting question to ask. So she also asked me if I thought that religion had a positive or negative effect on society. And I think it's not a one-word answer. I think it's a very complicated answer, and in some ways it's divorced from the religion in a way, because ultimately I said that some of the most inspiring people I've known, or some of my heroes that I aspire to be like, are actually motivated and driven by their faith. So even though I don't have any, I really admire some people that have been motivated by their religion. So Bruce Cockburn is a fantastic Canadian songwriter, one of the best songwriters out there, who wrote lots of political stuff, went around the world finding out all these different stories from different people, and wrote these incredible lyrics. But he was deeply religious, and he wrote a lot of songs that were based on his faith as well. And he was motivated by his faith. He was driven by that, and he did great work. He was, he still does. I'm talking about him in the past tense. He still does. and it's really important what he does. So he's a good example of that. Martin Luther King's an obvious, very famous example of someone who did fantastic things in society and was really, really important. One of the crucial, significant parts of the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King is really important, but again, he was motivated by his faith. And on a personal level, one of my close friends that sadly died a couple of years ago now, but he spent his whole life, well, certainly a big chunk of his life, spending half of the year building up money with charity work that he did, and then the other half of his life, other half of the year, going to 3 different countries and helping out street kids with their hunger and feeding them and looking after them. 3 different places in Asia and Africa, just helping them out, just completely selflessly, and spending half the year saving up money so that he could do that. And he was completely driven by his faith. And I admired the man so much, and he was a fantastic man. And he did all that stuff, and that was always his driving force. That was the reason why he got up in the morning, and that he was always doing that. And just a fantastic man. So that can be a thing. I think religion also has been the not really the motivation, but it's produced some of the most selfish people I know as well, and some of the most self-absorbed people I know, and people that have been as inward looking as I've ever met. So you've had the opposite of that as well, where if there's been an issue in the world that has confused them or upset them, rather than looking around the world to see what the solution might be, they've looked at the Bible, which was not really going to give you any answers. And they've divorced themselves from the world, and that's been something I've witnessed that a few times, and that is a shame, because these are good people, but they've just sort of looked inwards and just sort of not got involved. And that is something that can come from those kind of teachings, as well as the opposite, the great stuff, the good stuff, when someone is being much more selfless. So that's kind of an interesting, weird thing, because that's the point, that sometimes the religion, the faith, the teachings, the moral lessons aren't actually what produces the person. Is how the person reacts to that and what they want to do with it and how they want to carry that into their life. Because also I do think that moral fiber and being a good person isn't necessarily the product of some kind of faith. I don't have that kind of belief, but I do believe I live a very a life that considers others and is empathetic, and I care about people. I do what I can to change the world, and I care a lot for the students I teach, and that anyone that I see around and make friends with or whatever, anyone I can interact with, I love my family, that my kids, blah 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 blah. You get the point. I'm not driven by any kind of feeling that I should do that, because that's the godly thing to do. And equally, there are people that are good people that are driven by that. Equally, there are people that are not good people and very selfish and nasty as well in their ideology, that is driven by their religion as well. So it's a very complicated answer about whether it can produce good or bad. I don't think it's as simple as yes or no. It's very complicated. So yeah, bit of a ramble there with the last question, but I think they're really interesting questions. So what do you think about stories, narratives, and your relationship religion? Do you think stories are the bedrock of society? Is there certain stories that have captured your imagination, either when you were a kid or now, that could be historical stories or other kind of stories like that? Oh, I'm just remembering another question. Um, she also asked me if there was a character that had a big impact on me, and I wanted to make I wanted to give a good answer, and I thought about this, and actually, I had to say that I was really shocked by my reaction to the last minute of the film, The Force Awakens, Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Right, this is not going to be a massive surprise to anyone who knows the channel to know that I'm a Star Wars fan because I've talked about it. But I couldn't believe how emotional I got when Luke Skywalker appeared at the end. I must have just suddenly turned into a 7-year-old or something, and I got so emotional when he appeared at the end, and my kids are going, "You all right, Dad?" And yeah, it was just really weird. So apparently, according to that moment in my life where it just hit me, I think that character must have had an impact on my life because it really did hit me when he appeared in that film. So there we go. How weird is that? So I said Luke Skywalker. I thought he had a huge impact on my life, and maybe it's that idea that as a kid I really was completely taken in by that idea of good versus evil, being a good person, doing the right thing. Luke Skywalker does stay committed to doing the right thing. He's utterly compelled to help Ben and to save this princess that he's never met, and he feels like it's his duty to do that. And there's something romantic and silly about it, but there's also something quite honourable about what he's doing as well. And I must have been captured by that when I was a kid because I don't think it's gone away. I'm not out to save any princesses at the moment, but it was quite shocking how emotional I got in that bit of that film. So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit because they are interesting questions, and let me know what you think about that anyway. Thanks a lot. Stay curious. It makes life interesting. Thank you.